Welcome back to the Photos by Mikey podcast. My name is Mikey, and today we have my co-host, Nick Sitarski.
What up, everyone?
What's going on, guys? So today it's going to be a long one. We're going to be talking all about the wedding day approach. So we're going to break everything down from the beginning of the day all the way to the grand exit. So sit back, grab some coffee, grab some donuts, whatever you guys want to munch on. I don't know what Nick likes, but... But yeah, we got a lot to talk.
All the munchies.
The munchies.
Yeah.
So we got a lot to talk about here. And so we're going to break things down even before the wedding day. So the first bullet point I have is actually the wedding day timeline. And so for a lot of photographers and filmmakers, this is basically like your key to success, right, Nick?
Right.
This is what's going to help you guys basically understand the wedding day, how it's going to go. Because we all know every wedding day is different based off the culture, based off like the size of the wedding, the bridal party. I mean, so many factors affect the wedding day. Yeah. So with our approach, we love to like work with the planner and grab that timeline. But sometimes that timeline is super long. So we condense the timeline just specifically for photography. And typically what we do is we basically type it up on the notes on our phone. If you have like, a different app too that can just capture, text message or whatever you want to do to make notes, that should be the easiest way, because if you have a second shooter or if you have a video team, you can just share that with everybody so everybody's on the same page.
Yep. Pull up one of my timelines right here.
Yep.
Wedding we did together.
Yep. There you go. And it just makes things super simple because, sometimes the timelines from the planner are so if you print those timelines, they're like 10 pages long.
Yeah.
Like we don't need to know all the details about when the DJ is going to arrive, what songs you're going to play. Those are...
What time food is going on their next shift.
Yeah. Those are details we don't really want to know, but it's for photography. We just need to know exactly when times are going to start. So
yep.
Let's talk about the preparation side of the wedding day and, what you guys need technically to do before even like starting the wedding day. So before I leave for the wedding day, I typically just make sure I have everything packed. And I used to do it back in the day where I had a checklist of all the gear, from the SD cards to the lenses to the lighting, all those things. But now, like, as you do more weddings, right? Like, I'm sure Nick,
yeah,
that you kind of just have it in your head that you know what to bring. But let me ask you, like, what's kind of like your approach when you're at home packing up all your gear?
Same. I've actually kind of got on a routine, especially since it's been rainy and there's been kind of slower season, where I'll actually practice as if I'm going to a wedding on any downtime I have. Kind of new approaches to how I would pack gear more efficiently, what gear I would bring instead of just bringing all the gear possible. Going over in my bag where is what, and I'm really just focusing on learning my gear. That way I could even be in a dark room, just open it up, I know I'm grabbing my grids, they're right there, and yeah.
Yeah, so basically just double checking too. I think that's the biggest thing. Like once you have it in the car, double check, triple check. There's been times where I pulled out of the driveway and I kind of like think about something that I may have forgotten. So I'll just pull to the side of the road and just double check my bag. So that's one tip we can give you guys, double check when you pack it in the car.
I think the most important things to double, triple, quadruple check are the obvious ones. You have your camera or cameras, you have SD cards loaded in those cameras, backup SD cards, on-camera flashes, and your straps. I mean, even if you forgot everything else, it would suck totally, for what you usually offer, but you're still going to be able to capture everything. You'll be able to capture the entire wedding, as long as you have your cameras, your SD cards, and your on-camera flashes, and definitely your straps.
And batteries.
And batteries, yes, batteries too.
And if you have like an on-camera flash that takes like AA's, like have multiple displays with you, because you just never know when maybe the battery's drained, or if you have rechargeable batteries, sometimes they lose power over, the past few days. So just having backups on backups.
And do not ever think that you can charge the day of.
But I would now recommend, though, to actually bring your chargers just in case.
Yeah, I do too. Actually, ever since the one in Corona, the Eagle, or was it
Glen Ivy?
Ever since then, you were charging your batteries. We were doing video, and I bring my chargers all the time now.
Oh yeah, well, especially for video, because video takes so much more power for the cameras. But just in case too, I think it's another backup to bring chargers and charge your batteries that you have maybe used earlier in the day, just in case you do need them. But so the other part of weddings here in California is most of the time is travel too, because a lot of the locations we go to are like San Diego, which could be like 2 hours away, or LA, which is not too far, but the traffic. Yeah. So if you are traveling right to a location, that's something you got to look into, right? How's your traffic that day? Was there construction on the road? What freeways should you take? Things like that. I know. Have you ever had any instance where you were late, Nick, or any? I don't want to say you were late, but any situations where you had to just couldn't make it on time?
Thankfully, no. But there was one wedding months ago. You could ask Tara all about this. I had our good friend Tara. Shout out to Tara. She's an amazing videographer. I had her second shooting for me. Yeah. I hopped on the freeway right over here off the 60, and apparently there was some sort of spill, and they had the freeway closed, and it wasn't on Maps or Google Maps, and I was stuck for 40 minutes, and Luckily, I had left early so I could go get something to buy, some food or something. And I called Tara, and I was like, you might have to start the getting readies. And also shout out, have a second shooter assistant. Second shooter, though, they're lifesavers. And right after I told her, I communicated with the bride. Mm-hmm. I told her, I was like, hey, look, this is the situation. Everything just everything opened up, haul tail down, and I made it right on time. So fun story. But thankfully, no. Thankfully, I haven't run into that situation. There's been something with the rain, and I thought I wasn't going to make it on time, and then the client canceled because they didn't want to be in the rain. So yeah.
It's just something to consider when you guys are traveling, especially if it's an hour away. The only instance I've never made it to it wasn't a wedding, but it was a portrait session, was I had a session scheduled in Anaheim. And I had left 3 hours before, because I knew I'm going to take the 91 freeway, and everybody knows that in California, that's the worst freeway, but that was the easiest route for me. And before I left it was clear. Yeah. But all of a sudden there was some guy who stole a police car, and they shut down the freeway for an hour. And I already told my client, I was on the phone, I was like, I'm not going to make it. So luckily I had another friend that was in OC cover for me. So that's another backup. Have good friends that are going to be able to back you up. Yeah. Parking is another consideration depending on the city. For example, downtown LA, there's not enough parking down there. So if you are planning to get there early, scout the parking location, or call the planner, or call ahead of time to figure out where you're going to park, because you have all that gear. You don't want to be walking 2 miles away.
Their parking is pretty tricky. I know we talked about this recently, but out in LA, if definitely scout it, like Mike is saying. If you're coming from out of town or coming into California from somewhere else, look into LA parking, because you'll go to a structure, just a typical parking structure. You'll pay your money. They'll tell you it's however much for the day. You go to get your car, and there's gates closed. Oh, and the parking structure closed at 7 p.m. or 6 p.m. on a Friday night or a Saturday night. And you're like, what the hell? It's such a trip, and you got to really know where to park over there.
Yeah, because not every street is the same too. I know there's limited time you can park on the streets. So yeah, do your research when you guys are like doing a wedding in the big city.
Yeah.
We kind of touched base on this one. This is weather. So of course in California, weather can change anytime depending on the location. It could be related to the rain. The heat is also a big one out here because in the summer, I mean, depending where you're at, like if you're doing a wedding in Palm Springs, I mean, it could be like triple digits, like consistently like the entire day.
Yeah.
So also consider that too. Like if you are gonna photograph outdoors the entire day, like make sure you're hydrated, make sure you have, you know, like supplementation to help you, and you know, maybe sunblock just because you don't want to burn.
Yeah. Talk to your clients too about wardrobe. There was a wedding I did that was outdoor. It was in the desert, and it was estimated to be 110 for the day. And I talked to them. Thankfully, I did because I asked them. I said, "Is there any, you know?" Because they had talked about doing like you know, suit and tie and all that. And so I talked to them, and they go, "Oh yeah, we changed it up. It's all casual, so feel free to wear shorts and sandals if you'd like." And I took advantage of that. I wore a hat, and I wore shorts, nice shorts from Old Navy, but still I took advantage of that. But yeah, it was going to be super hot, and I thought it was going to be long sleeve and all that stuff. And so. Oh yeah.
Always figure out what the type of weather conditions are so you can be prepared. For example, right now it's been raining here in California. So if you're going to shoot outside, have weather protection for your cameras and lenses. If you're gonna have gear that's in your bag, make sure that bag is, you know, either sealed with a cover, because water's gonna leak into that. And so that's the worst thing that you want is water getting into your gear, and it's gonna ruin your entire equipment.
And look ahead of time too where you're heading. I just did a wedding in December over at Niagara Falls, and I looked into the water that could come from the falls and stuff, and I got those rain covers, and thank God, because it was basically like it was raining.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And the wind too, if it's windy, man, like things can fly into your lenses, like sand, the dirt. So there's so many things that can happen.
Get like a UV filter.
UV filter just for protection. Especially if you're doing stuff like at the beach, if it's windy, or like in the sand dunes here in California. Man, like hopefully you have like a weatherproof camera body and lenses, because that sand is super, super fine, and it can get inside the camera.
I know. I took off the cover off one of my 8200s and still have sand from the session we did last year in Glamis.
Same. And one of the last things on the preparation list is if you have a team, right? So if you have second shooters and assistant, you know, I like to approach it like even weeks in advance, like maybe a couple weeks, just to send them the finalized timeline, like we do. So if there's any questions, we can kind of go back and forth. And so everybody has the copy of that, and they know the exact location. Because I know there's been times where I've worked for other photographers, and again, I don't want to name names here, but they've sent me the location, and it was a wrong location, but they did it by accident. They texted me the wrong hotel, but they were at the other hotel. So they just like had a typo on the actual hotel name, and it delayed us by like 10 minutes because I had to drive across like the freeway.
And also if you're second shooting or assisting or even associate shooting, most of the time that photographer, videographer is going to have full contact with the client, and you're not. So try to check in too. If you don't hear anything, check in, try to get as much information as you can, because especially if you're associate shooting, if you don't know what associate shooting is, it's where you're filling in as the lead photographer or videographer for the day. Check in, get as much information as you can, and
awesome. Even if you're the assistant or second shooter, like if you really want to gain more experience, like ask questions, because sometimes I think second shooters are scared to ask the lead shooter like questions. And if you're not sure, like do that weeks in advance, right? You don't want to be doing that at the wedding day and not prepared.
Definitely don't wing it.
Exactly. Know what you get yourself into. We kind of touched base on this. The next one is having a checklist on the day. or even before. So again, like if you don't have as much experience, like understanding what to bring, then just bring everything. That's what I would always say. Just bring everything.
Yeah. Luckily, another thing that I've done is I've gotten to a point now where I have kind of separate gear for different things. So I have a wedding area and a portrait area, and sometimes I'll use some of the gear I'll use for there too, but it's kind of cool. Like I'll stage my area too. Yeah. Like if I have my wedding stuff, I have like a little staged area, kind of like a checklist too. I had a checklist. I just haven't, things blank, but I've gotten pretty used to it now. Many weddings, but I'll actually I have like for my lighting, I have my portrait lighting, headshot lighting kind of just in its area. And then I have all my wedding stuff. And so I know that if I look over and I see something that doesn't look right, I'll know that, it's supposed to come over there and stuff like that. But if you're just getting started though, and you're kind of using all the gear you have, I agree. If you're not totally sure, just bring it.
That's my thought process on that now. Like I used to like always divide and conquer, like, okay, if this wedding reception, it looks like it's going to be outside, I don't think I'm going to bring it flash. You may use LED, but you just never know when you may need it. So I just bring everything.
And on that note too, if you're getting started, or even if you've been doing this for a while and you want to try something new, still bring the stuff that you've used or that you've practiced with, and then bring your other stuff. Like if you want to try an LED, maybe practice at home with it first, practice with any friends or family, or do some street stuff or product shoots. Try to practice with it as much as possible. Or if you don't have that kind of opportunity or time, still bring your other gear that you're used to using, and then bring that as like give it a shot, give it a try. But definitely don't leave gear at home and try to experiment on the day of like a wedding.
Unless like that it's gonna work. But I mean, you could still, I guess, try it out. But you don't make it your main focus on the wedding day, right? You still gotta deliver on the wedding day. And next is arriving early. This is one of my pet peeves, and it applies to everything I do, because being a professional, especially when you get to like that mid-level to like luxury, I mean, they're expecting another level of customer service and experience from you. So I like to arrive sometimes about 45 minutes to an hour, just for me to kind of just settle in and just get my gear ready and kind of scout the location. I would never recommend that you arrive right on time. Like that is the worst thing you can do.
Same here. An hour and a half, sometimes 2 hours. Worst case scenario, you're gonna have to just go down the street and go get some food or a coffee or something, and then look at the area around you and think about what you're going to do for shots and stuff. Best case scenario, you can go and unload, get all set up, and have time to walk around, check out what it's going to look like, maybe interact, get everyone kind of settled in, knowing that you're going to be there to photograph the wedding or the shoot, whatever it might be. So
exactly. And like Nick was saying, that gives you time to scout the location. And anytime I arrive at the venue, the first like 2-3 things I do is look for the family location where I'm going to photo shoot the family formals, and for the romantics, and another option just in case that doesn't work out, right? Because sometimes there may be stuff in the background that doesn't look good, or there's,
the sun's popping out from behind the building you weren't expecting.
Or there's something with a venue where there's like, for example, like golf courses, there's always something happening where there's golfers in the background. So having options, that's why it's so important. Like if you arrive early, that's one of the first things I would do is scout the location, understand where the light's going to be at the time that you're going to shoot the family formals or romantics.
Talk to anybody that's there. Ask them what can I do? What can I not do? Or what location can I got? Because you can go and scout a location and go, that's the spot. You go over there and get immediately geeked out. Or, some of these church weddings, they'll tell you, we'll do all the family photos right after following the ceremony. you get done and they're like, oh yeah, we have to leave. We have another event.
Exactly.
So, communicate that kind of stuff too, going on the timeline.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's very true. Some wedding venues, even here in Riverside, they have like the Mission Inn in Riverside, they have multiple weddings on the same day, sometimes 3 weddings. So sometimes you got to understand that there's people walking around, and that the location may not look exactly what it may look like hours later.
Yep.
And another thing to do also when you arrive early is just to connect with vendors, right? Especially with the planner. That's the first person I usually connect with. The planner is like the person that you want to let them know that you're there, so they can plan everything ahead of time if you need help with anything.
Right.
And just in case things change too, that's a great way to double check with her if the timeline is still solid.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, the planner, usually the DJ is already at the venue.
Yeah.
Sometimes though, most of the time, if you're doing like a traditional type of wedding day coverage, right, you're typically not going to see the planner until the ceremony or the reception.
Yeah.
If they don't have a planner, then they're going to have a day of coordinate at the venue. So typically you may actually just run into the hair and makeup artist at the hotel. Yeah. And maybe like family and friends at the hotel and the bridal party. But yeah, for the most part, most of the vendors you're probably not going to see until later on.
Yeah. And that's another thing to be prepared for. Maybe talk to the bride or the groom or just the couple in general. Find out if they're getting a planner that's going to be attending. Because that's another thing that you could communicate, if whether or not you're going to get the timeline and you're going to be kind of in control of the whole day, and to be prepared for them coming to you for timeline stuff, right? Because that happens all the time.
Yep, exactly. And the next thing is mindset. So it's going to be a long day. Yep. It's going to be a long mental and physical day, especially if you're doing at least 8 hours. Sometimes, I've done 12-hour weddings and it's like a long day. Yep. So you're on your feet, you're on the go most of the time. You're trying to make sure like you capture everything. So that's why I said it's like a mental aspect to it too, because you're constantly thinking about where I'm going to shoot next or what I'm going to shoot next. Yep. And at the same time, you want to provide a level of service and, be yourself and not show that you're, tired or exhausted. And that's just the way it is. Like, you want to make sure that you show that positivity on the day. Again, everyone's personality is different, so I can't speak for everybody, but you definitely want to show that you are there to help the wedding day.
Do your stretches, get your sleep.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Like it all factors in the day prior to, like, you don't want to be at the bar at midnight the night before taking shots. Yeah,
exactly. Don't be doing any of that. Have a good breakfast. Don't have anything that's going to be messing with your stomach. If you have a light stomach, don't eat breakfast.
Don't get a big ass burrito. Yeah. An hour before the wedding day. Yeah, that's a no in my book.
Yeah. What's the one restaurant? The Broken Yolk.
The Broken Yolk. Yeah, that was not good, man. Yeah,
it was good. It was tasty. It was just.
Yeah, it wasn't good what happened after. Yeah, dude. Yeah, that definitely. Like I'd say with breakfast is eat something light. Like, don't eat so much food that you're gonna be going to the restroom like every hour or so.
And I definitely recommend, as far as going back to preparation for that, bring a snack. Don't feel weird about bringing a snack. Bring maybe like a little bag or pack it in your bag or something like that. Bring just something, because chances are you're not going to eat until dinner time. And I'll definitely bring water or a Gatorade or something like that. But you're definitely not going to be eating until dinner time. Just expect that. And sometimes they'll throw you for a loop and tell you, oh yeah, we're going to do some event during dinner. And especially if you don't have a second shooter, you're going to be like, all right, well, I got to go cover this and get to my dinner even later now.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. Great tip, Nick. Yeah, it's bring like a bar or something something that you enjoy snacking on, because dinner could be delayed because of something that get pushed back earlier in the day. So then you may not have time to eat because of certain things that happened.
And if they're not going to serve you dinner, don't be like that one guy that deleted the SD cards, but bring a snack that's really noisy.
There you go.
Bring some chips.
There you go. Yeah, the thing I've always said is expect the unexpected.
Yeah.
You will never know until you get there, and the only thing you do is just be prepared for all different situations. Okay, so let's move on to the team aspect, right? Because some photographers, they're primarily photographers, and you may work with a videographer, right?
Yeah.
And it happens all the time. People want photos and videos.
Right.
And so I've done both. I've worked with photographers and filmmakers before, and sometimes there's two videographers on the day, and so that's usually a team of 4.
Yeah.
And so usually what I recommend, if you don't know the videographers, just have a quick conversation like about how you guys are going to work together, because there's always a little bit of tension in the beginning. If you don't know each other, right, Nick?
Yep.
There's always a little bit of tension because everybody wants to be the big dog sometimes. They want to get their shots. But one thing I really want to emphasize here is that we're all here to do the job, and we got to work as a team, and that means also working with all the other vendors at the wedding day. And sometimes I get it, photographers and videographers, they butt heads, but the way I see it is traditionally the lead photographer is the go-to, because they are needing shots that must be done, and sometimes it is more priority because the bride and groom did pay for photography and it's more expensive typically. That's the way it is right now, which I still don't believe. I believe that photography and videography should be at the same level. But the way the wedding day timeline is, it's structured for photography.
And on top of that, you got a lot of video, especially doing video myself and working with you doing video, and being on that side of it. A lot of the video, especially like portraits and stuff, you'll get that chance to do like your own what is that, like poses and stuff, but for a lot of the shots it is kind of candids of what they're doing with the photographer at the time. So if you do get to work with a video or photo team, either or, and they're patient, understanding, you're vibing, get their card. Get their Instagram, put them on your list.
Absolutely. So one thing I could also say about working as a photo and video team is that approach it from, again, I don't want to not say video is important, but when you guys are on the day capturing footage and photography, when the photographer is taking photos, I do like the fact when videographers are kind of also shooting at the same time, because there's only so much time you can do, and that's the biggest constraints about doing photo and video on the day. There's only so much time. So the way I like to do it in my approach when I have my team is that I lead the poses, and then the lead videographer basically just captures the moment at the same time. Because if we're switching back and forth, it's too much to handle for the couple. It ruins the flow, right? So if you work with a good photographer and you're the videographer, just have a conversation with the photographer and say, you know what, can you just have some movement? Because that's the key, right? Having movement and understanding if they want a certain style. I get it, some videographers have a certain style, but for the most part, you can get most of it just by having that being on the side of the photographer and just capturing those footage. And also too, understand what lenses they have. Right. I've worked with videographers who primarily shot on a super wide lens, and so
you have to be.
You're in my shot. You're in my shot. I'm like, dude, so now I understand okay, let's try to be on the same focal length so we're not in the same shot, right? And so that's, again, it's just having understanding what lenses they have too. That makes a huge difference. Okay, getting ready part. Man, this is again, this can branch out to so many different avenues. if they are getting ready at two different locations, that's when you need a second photographer,
Yep.
right, Nick?
Yep.
Especially if they're not in the same hotel.
Oh, yeah.
I've done it before where, they didn't want a second shooter and I've had to go to two different locations. It just makes things so much difficult.
Especially when you talk to them about the timeline and they don't have a planner, they only have a venue coordinator, and on their timeline it says ceremony at 2:30 and getting ready to start at 12, and they're like 30 minutes apart from each other, and they didn't want a second shooter, and you're like, well, time to pull off some magic, huh? No. I'll let them know it won't be possible unless I have a second shooter. So
Yeah, exactly.
yeah,
And having a second shooter is just it levels you up.
Yeah.
Because now you have another backup in case something happens to your camera or batteries, especially if you guys have the same system.
Yeah.
I mean, it can still work with like different bodies and brands, but if you guys are using the same brand, for example, like Sony's, man, those are interchangeable, like the lenses. And I know I do it a lot of times with my other photographers that have the same brand. Sometimes we just switch because like I want them to be on this lens, and like, okay, I don't have time to go to my back here, just switch lenses, and it's like a seamless flow.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's another tip for you guys. If you guys are getting into like second shooters, maybe look into like having that second shooter with the same, camera, but it's not necessary. I mean, with editing, it's not a problem at all.
Yeah.
So getting ready, right? So let me ask you, Nick. So in terms of like getting ready portion, what do you usually recommend in terms of time frame for you to arrive at the hotel or at the venue for getting ready?
Like how long
How long do you need? Yeah.
For getting ready, I usually tell my couples that at least anywhere 15-30 minutes, and I know that seems kind of short. Some people require like an hour. But I also know that the bride and the grooms, whoever's getting makeup and hair done, they're usually pushing it to the very end, and they don't typically want them without their makeup on or their hair done. And I tell them that, I understand you're trying to wait to the very end to where right before you put on the dress and you're going to walk down because you don't want to sweat or you don't want it to get messed up or because you're going to be crying. And I get that. So I usually request minimum 15 minutes. Usually for like bridal, for like more traditional stuff, I'll try to show up about, to give myself about 30 minutes, maybe an hour. So I can cause I usually coordinate with my couples to have the bride to have the rings and the flat lays and stuff like that. And I'll spend time on there and then go check in, see how they're doing, try to get some candids if they let me, and then go back to getting like all my detail stuff. And I usually get all my details done with the first location. And but yeah, with the couples in general, like the bride, I'll 15 to 30 minutes and kind of get those candids, get those it also gives me, because of my, I've kind of got used to my workflow, how I'm going to get the backlit shots or the hairspray or the pinning the light and stuff. I usually have all that stuff ready to go, set up, and kind of goes hand in hand with showing up a little bit early and just kind of scout out the room. That way I could just set my light up or do what I got to do, get the shot, get out of there, get to the next location. So yeah, if I'm by myself and I'm doing two different, if they're in the same hotel or the same like house or whatever they're getting ready in, it makes it even better. And I'll just usually tell them, give me an hour, 30 minutes for each. And sometimes even 2 hours. If everything's at the same exact location, I'll just show up 2 hours early. Usually groom's already almost ready anyway. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I think a caveat to this is to have the bride basically talk to the hair and makeup artist and tell them exactly what time that they should finish. Yeah. Because if the hair and makeup artist doesn't know like your timeline, then you may be like cut short like half the time that you need. So because it's really depending on them too, right? Exactly. It's depending on when they're going to finish the bride, and she's the most important part, and also the bridesmaids too, because if they're not done yet and you get there, it's like there's nothing to shoot. Like there's no people to photograph because everybody still doesn't have hair and makeup. and you're just focused on the details. And so that's probably the most important part, is just understanding when that's going to be completed. So then you can arrive towards the tail end and get everybody looking good. Right.
Right. I tend to notice with with bridals when they're doing hair and makeup, usually makeup, especially because hair, they tend to be working on the bride as soon as they get there. And it's like, I showed up early. They're like, no, but, which I'll ask the hairdresser or the makeup artist if they could just sit back for a few, so I can get some photos for them too. One, they really like that too, so they can put that on their Instagram or their portfolio and stuff like that, or how they share their work. And which that's another one, get their information so you can share it to them. And I'll ask them usually to sit back so we can do, if they are done with them, we'll do mock-up photos, where they're have the hairspray, spraying it, even if it's not really hitting them, it's still a cool shot. Light up the hairspray, or makeup artists kind of act like they're brushing on the makeup. Get the photos. So
absolutely. But in general, I recommend, again, this is my approach to it, I recommend 2 hours prior to the ceremony time.
Okay.
Because it gives you time to focus on the dress, the rings, the details, and then the bridal party, and just enough time for you to kind of not rush things, right? And also enough time just in case things run late. But again, it all depends on the wedding. Sometimes some couples don't want a lot of getting ready photos. And then also think about the travel time. If they're gonna have to travel to the ceremony, figure out how much time they need to get in the car and then drive and then get off. So that also adds time. So, but yeah, always work with the bride and groom to have enough time for photography, because they're paying you to, you're the professional. So always advise them on how much time you need. I know everyone's so different, but that's usually what I recommend. And then in terms of like the details, again, everyone does this so different. I've seen photographers who bring their own mat. They bring their own ring boxes. Do what you like to do. Like, do your style. I know some photographers don't like to do the dresses because it could be very difficult, because sometimes there's nowhere to hang it. And one tip I can give you guys, if it's a must for the bride, bring a command hook. Because those things are lifesavers. You can hang it on the wall. You can pretty much hang it anywhere, because if you don't have that and there's nowhere to hang the dress, the only thing I can think of is just draping over the bed, but that's not gonna look good.
Draping it over the bed, or resorting to hanging it over on some like hotel light. Something like that. So that little hook has come in handy a lot.
Oh yeah. For so many times. Okay, so ceremony time, and this could vary depending on the venue or the location. And one of the things I think I really want to touch base on is like for example, church ceremonies, because some of them may have restrictions, some may not, but understanding what the restrictions are. And so, because you don't want the restrictions to not be able to provide you like the quality of work that you need to provide. So typically there's a coordinator at like most of these churches. So try to connect with them even before the wedding, understand like what you can't do. For the most part, typically you are able to like go line up right behind the first pew. But most of the time they don't like you going past where the priest is on the side. And you've been to some of these Catholic ceremonies with me where you can't even go in the middle aisle.
You can't even move.
You couldn't move, or and I get it. I don't have any issues with like the restrictions, but just have an understanding of what you can't do. Because if you get there and then you're unprepared, you're gonna scramble. Very, very much so.
And definitely that's hand in hand again with showing up a little bit early. Communicate with the pastor or the coordinator, whoever's in charge. Like what the couple wants, also what you can't do. Try to be respectful, but I also try to push it. If they tell me I can't move, I'm going to tell them that I'm probably going to. But nothing crazy. I'll be respectful. And for the most part, as long as you're respectful, they'll go, oh yeah, no, you can, they'll kind of change it up. Yeah, you can bounce back and forth. Like, no, that's like they're thinking, oh yeah, and they'll tell you like, oh yeah, we've had these horror stories where they're, you know, the photographer's standing behind them and, you know, like trying to shoot over the pastor's shoulder, you know, and so they're like, yeah, you can't move anywhere. But if you tell them, you know, this is the respect I'll give, you know, this is kind of what they want and this is what I am going to do, but in like a respectful way. For the most part, they'll work with you and they'll lighten up a little bit. But if you kind of go in there acting a certain way, they're gonna.
Yeah, because again, at the end of the day, it's a wedding. Like you're just a small part of the wedding day. Like you're not the main person that's getting married. So like the way I think about the ceremony is like we're there to capture it, but we don't want to be a disruption. Yep. So if you're jumping around like doing crazy stuff, then and people notice it, then that's usually when, you know, that becomes like a distraction for people in the ceremony. So another tip too is like maybe joining the rehearsal, like wedding rehearsal, like, you know, if it's the day before, a couple of days before, especially if you've never been to the ceremony site. That's a great way to understand the way they're going to have the processional, because every wedding's different. So having understanding of how that's going to go, it's going to make you a better photographer on the day and be prepared, especially if you have a second shooter. That can help you understand where you're going to put your second shooter for that's going to be the most, you know, feasible. Because sometimes, depending on the lighting too, let's say it's an outdoor ceremony, right? And if it's like super backlit, then you probably don't want your second shooter like at that area where it's going to be super flared out. You may want to stage her or him on like an other side. So yeah, that's another thing too, is like if you are able to come to the rehearsal, normally they have it at the same time as the ceremony. So then you can figure out, okay, the lighting. Right. And that's the biggest part of outdoor ceremonies, how the lighting is going to go.
Dude, I did a rehearsal last year. It was so funny because the wedding was going to be in March, and we did the rehearsal in February. And I don't know what I was thinking, but
it was a few months before.
Well, it was a month
before.
No, it was like a week or two out.
Oh, okay.
But it was right before the daylight savings
time.
So I was like, oh yeah, this one's gonna be the day of the wedding. I was like, oh damn, I forgot all about that.
That too. Yeah, daylight saving time can mess people up.
I know. I'm still trying to get used to this right now. The 6:30 thing it is like sunset right now.
Yep, it's like 7, I think.
Yeah.
So definitely understand that, because if you show up on the wedding day, it's like, oh, why is it getting darker sooner, right? Or more time. So, and also too, ceremonies are, depending on the culture, there's so many types of cultures out there and traditions. So if you've never been to, like, for example, I just speaking on behalf of California, because there's a lot of Catholic churches here. If you've never been to a Catholic ceremony, there's certain traditions that they do, right? Like the sacrament. There's a lot of like different singing and praying, right? And then of course the different traditions we have with like the coins and like the the veil. So have understanding, if this is your first time doing that specific wedding, maybe look it up on YouTube. YouTube it and just see how it's run through, because you may not. We've been to like Catholic ceremonies where sometimes the kiss is like not at the end. It's like sometimes in the middle, and
it'll be like that. It'll be a different language and something you're not used to hearing, and all of a sudden they're kissing. all of a sudden, so get your safety side shots. If you have a second shooter, keep them on the sides if you can, and then just stay in the middle and get stuff like that. And you kind of get an idea of how long these things go on, especially if you Google it or YouTube it, like we're saying. Catholic wedding, typically 55 minutes to an hour and 20 minutes is the usual. And somewhere in between that time, they're going to kiss. I've been to one where they kissed and then continued having a ceremony. And then they just walked away. Like, they didn't walk down the aisle. They just started walking away. Everyone started leaving. And I was like, what?
That's when you got to stay on the couple the entire time. Like, if you don't know what's going to happen, just stay in the middle of the aisle and just stay there.
It's become part of my my questionnaire. Like, is there anything? And I'll ask them during the consultation, during ceremony, what are your guys's like religion or religious like ceremony or traditions that you'll be doing that might be different?
Yeah.
And sometimes they don't know because that's all they've known. So you'll ask them, like you'll kind of brief them about stuff, and then they'll tell you, oh yeah, no, we do this, or we, and so kind of communication.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, just do your research, guys.
Yeah.
Depending on the couple, they may have multiple like days too. Like I know a lot of, Hindu weddings, a lot of Indian weddings, they happen like 5 days straight, and there's different things that happens in each of those days. So just having a good understanding is key to capturing those moments. So after the ceremony, typically what happens is that couples want photos with their family, right? Yeah. And bridal party photos. Actually, one thing we missed on this list was a first look.
Oh yeah.
So let me touch base on that real quick. So for those that don't know what that is, basically it's just the first time the bride and groom are all dressed up and they want to see each other before they walk down the aisle. Yep. So typically it's usually like maybe half an hour or maybe like 20 minutes before. It could be even earlier depending on what they want to do. But if they plan to do a first look, most of the time they want to do family photos and bridal party photos immediately because they want to knock those out before the ceremony. Because they want more time for cocktail hour and just more time hanging out after the ceremony.
Yeah, and then it is a slightly newer thing, and it is definitely non-traditional, the first looks. But also keep in mind as far as locations, communicate with them about locations for the first look, because doing it before the ceremony also typically means that it's not going to be the most ideal light, and you're going to be having that time with the couple to do the portraits, like their main wedding photos in the least ideal time. So 2 p.m. doing portraits, and so maybe looking to locations, throw out ideas for locations, what's going to offer some good shade while also looking really pretty, or maybe behind the building, different, scouting the area like what we were saying. Because you could get into a situation where you're doing a first look in the desert at 2 p.m. and the lighting's not perfectly, for those type of photos. And sometimes you may have to do it inside, right? Because with the bride, typically she still wants to have that special moment where everyone sees her for the first time. So that's another tip, guys. Like if you do the first look and there's already guests at the hotel, sometimes people stay there. Maybe they're gonna have to do in the room, which is normal. I mean, a lot of times, like the bride can't even leave the room because there's people walking around and they may see her. So be prepared for that too. Is like figure out multiple options in case guests is already at the hotel or the venue. Yeah, the most common things that I've been seeing as far as that goes, by the way, is first looks with a couple. Sometimes they don't want to do that, but a look with the bride and her father. Or the groom and his father or mother. And so first looks with the bridal party. Yeah. So these are the more common things that I've been noticing more and more with weddings these last few years is first looks, but it might not always be just the couple. So it could be multiple first looks. And so that, again, like you're going to need more time for that. Let the makeup artist know because it's probably going to be tears after tears. Exactly. And another thing to keep in mind too is the bridal party. If they're gonna have a first look at before the ceremony, make sure they're all ready to go, because you don't want to do the first look and then no one's ready, and then like you can't take any bridal party for that. Scrambling and now you're out of time. That's the whole purpose of like the first look. Most of the time is so we can get more photos. And also immediate family too, and so that's one of the advantages of having a first look before the ceremony is you can knock out most of those photos out of the way, and now you have a little bit more time for romantics. And so, but let's go back. Let's say the couple didn't want a first look, right? So it's more of a traditional setup. They have the ceremony, and then now they're finished with the ceremony and they want family photos. So again, everyone has different approaches to this. So let me just break down my approach, the way I feel like it's the most efficient. So the way I do it, if they're not going to have a first look
is do immediate family first.
Yeah.
Do one side, do the other side, and then do a big group one. So then they can go back inside and just enjoy, or go to cocktail hour and enjoy. And then you do the bridal party, because the bridal party is going to be there all day. You know, they can wait. Typically that's their best friends, or, you know, siblings maybe. And now you can have a little bit more time without the family hanging around. And so then you move on to the bridal party, you know, do different things with them, and then you can do the romantics.
Yeah.
So let me ask you, Nick, how's your approach to that, to the family formals and the bridal party?
Yeah. Usually following ceremony, try to get all the family photo, usually on site. I try to push for that, especially because that area is going to be really pretty and made up for them. They'll have the arch and all that. It's usually a really good backdrop. Lighting's not good. Scouting the area beforehand, kind of looking at what's going to be a good wide area, where then also keep in mind you're going to have people that are going to be waiting staged up. So on the area where they're going to be able to wait, while also being out of the photo, because a lot of what you're going to get to is a lot of times you're going to get family members that want to, for some God knows reason, they want to look to see how you're doing these things, and they're going to get in the frames because you're usually using a wider focal length. And so a good spot to where they can stage behind, but you can also communicate with them, you know, try who's going to be next in the shots as far as family goes. I usually try to communicate with my couples for creating that shot list. Usually the most important one is the family and the bridal party. Bridal party is typically easy because you know who's going to be the bridal party, but family photos and any like the important family photos, because next thing you know, especially when you're set up for that, you're going to get aunts and uncles that are twice removed that want photos and they didn't want that, and they're you're going to be in control of that. So having that shot list, I'll definitely usually I don't really have I'll go off for the romantics and the bridal parties, not a big shot list. I have my own thing that I do, but for those I'll definitely go off a shot list. Try to get those done and out of the way first, and then for the most part, the bridal party, they know they're going to be up doing photos for a while, so they're usually game. And so I usually try to get family and friends, get those ones done, get them out of there as fast as possible. Usually takes me, I tell my couples, depending on the family, depending on how rowdy, also depending on their timeline, what they've offered. I've been to a wedding where they offered everyone a glass of wine or margarita for the ceremony. And that was a fun one. Trying to get a bunch of drunk people to get photos done, or buzz people. Some of them are lightweights, but try to get those ones knocked out as fast as possible, so you can move on and either go to that next location or go to, get the bridal party and stuff like that done. I usually go family, immediate family, important family photos, then any friends if that's what they want. Usually they don't. Then into bridal parties, I'll tend to keep it in the ceremony area, and then we'll all go together to a different site. And then, knock out bridal party. And then also gives me a little bit of time for light to go down, because typically we're doing this outside and wanting the best possible light for the couples for portraits, and then get theirs done. And usually, as far as time goes, for family photos, I usually request 30 minutes, 30 to 45 minutes. For a bridal party, it takes me 10, 15 minutes just to do some fun stuff. Usually I'll try to do a full bridal party, and then bride with bridesmaids, or what are they called?
Flower girls?
Flower girls, bridesmaids, maid of honor, and then kind of do some individuals with each. Then the same for the guys, and then if it's same sex couples, I'll kind of switch it up too. So sometimes it depends on also what they want to. I'll communicate with them. Usually it's 15 to 30 minutes that I'll give that, and then with the couple, it's usually the same 15, 30 minutes. So 30 minutes pretty much for each. So an hour and a half that I need to knock all those out.
Awesome. Yeah. Another tip for family photos like you were saying, having a shot list. But I think what I've been doing recently is having like either a family friend or a family member that knows everyone, because
that makes
you
it really easy.
you can have a shot list, but you know, trying to figure out who Uncle Bob is and like calling their name out, they may not be there, you know, at the site. So then having someone to help you out is super important. If you can have the planner help you out too, that'd be amazing. Another thing that's happening at the same time that you may want to do, if the reception was just completely finished, would have your second shooter, because typically you don't need a second shooter at the family formals right away. You can have them photograph the reception. If the cake's already there, photograph all the desserts and stuff like that, all the details, right? Because they put so much money into the venue, right? All those little details that you want to incorporate that to the album.
It is funny that you say that, because thinking about that now, the last few weddings I've done, I've turned to the maid of honor and or the best man, and they usually know the family. They're usually really close, and they know the whole family, or somewhat, or they'll know somebody who does. And so since we're working so close to them, I've actually the last few weddings, I think it was one best man and then maid of honor, and I know their first name, especially after just doing getting readies and all that. Like it's comfortable, like, can you get Nana, Nana this one or Nana? So
exactly. And this is your opportunity. I know a lot of photographers don't like to do family photos, but this is your opportunity to really take charge, right? Because sometimes it could be rowdy, it could be people not listening. So this is sometimes when you have to like speak up.
You're gonna lose your voice.
If you're not like an extrovert, or you don't typically are not that type A personality, this is when you need to like. So what I would recommend for a lot of photographers that are like starting out is actually take the lead, and have. This is probably the most efficient way. So after the ceremony, right, advise like whoever the officiant is, or even the planner, and especially the officiant, if he can make a simple, announcement, like all immediate family stay at the ceremony site, if that's where they're gonna do the photos, and then have the planner help you get everybody out of the ceremony site. And then once you have everybody there, and then you can make a super big announcement like, guys, my name is Mike. I'm the photographer for the day, because most of the time you haven't met them yet. The bridal party, they're good to go. So with the family members, at least now you're connecting with them, and you're telling them the expectations. So you're telling them, we're going to be here. If you guys are not cooperating, they're going to be here even longer, because I know what you guys want to go to the bar and drink up. So, give them the expectations of what's going to happen, and give them some urgency, because if you don't, they're just going to sometimes walk all over you, like Uncle Bob's be over your shoulder. Let me do this. They're gonna,
which I've had plenty of times, and I'm sure I'll make some photographers and videographers mad right now. But as far as those who don't want to do family photos or group photos, just know, like those photographers and videographers, just know that for the most part, this wedding that they're having, this celebration, the most important thing to these couples are their family and friends. And on Instagram or stuff like that, if I have them on social media, they'll post maybe 5, maybe 2 portraits that I took of them. But for the most part, the photos that they're coming to me and asking me for, the most important photos, are the ones of the family and friends. The group photos, the bridal party photos, the ones of them having fun. And you think you're doing all this great art, and what they actually want are the photos of their grandma, or their bridal party, to see them doing those toasts or them all dancing, so for those who don't want to do group photos, you're not getting the most important photos that they want. Sorry.
Again, it's a wedding, and there's family involved. And so
unless it's an elopement or something like that.
We're talking about traditional weddings, right? Where you have, friends and family that are witnessing the couple get married. So, I mean, anybody that, and this has always been my approach. And, I tell my team, like, whoever's there, this is the opportunity to take a photo of every single person at the wedding. Like, that should be your goal, to take a photo, even if it's a candid photo, of every single person that is there at the wedding. Because you never know when they're going to ask for a photo down the line of like a friend or something. But it's also part of their legacy. They want to show their kids later on, like, oh, here's my friend that was there, or grandma and grandpa. So those are really important. Like that's should be at the top of your priority when you're shooting the wedding day.
Yeah.
Okay, let's because we could talk all about family photos, man.
Yeah.
This is it's one of those topics I think that sometimes don't get talked about enough.
Yeah.
And how important that is. But yeah, we have a lot of things still to talk about. So let's move on to romantics, or that's typically what some people call it, but basically it's just after the ceremony, once you have the family formals done and the bridal party photos done, then you focus on the bride and groom. And this is when you can be a little bit more creative. You can do photos pretty much anywhere in the venue. I mean, this is your time to really, showcase your creativity and your style.
Yep.
And so there are so many things you can do. Like, for example, sometimes I do like to incorporate lighting, right? With off-camera flash. Sometimes I like just do natural light.
Yeah.
Sometimes movement, right? So, this is like really your opportunity to like, and these are probably sometimes where the couple may print these, large canvas print or large print. So what's kind of like your approach, Nick, on how you kind of do romantics on the wedding day?
So with romantics, for me, typically with my couples, I've already done an engagement session with them. That's included with all my wedding packages. My 8-hour and my full day wedding package. So usually we've already shot together. They have a good idea, and we kind of go over, some of the moves that I'll be doing. Maybe aside from like the veil shots and stuff like that. But as far as when the time comes, we get into location, we set up. I'll have a off-camera flash with me, and I've gotten it down to where it's nothing too crazy. As far as my off-camera flash, if anybody's interested in that, it's the Flashpoint Explorer 300 Pro, and I'm using either a 25-inch or a 36-inch octabox, and that's kind of what I'm just doing now, unless it's a different type of lighting, which maybe I'll play around with, or if my couple give me time, I'll bring some grids and do maybe some gels and do some different color type stuff. But for the most part, I'm doing just some lighting like that, maybe to fill in some shadows depending on the light. But usually we set up, we'll do some simple stuff first, kind of get the simple. Sometimes that's really what they love. Some of these couples love that the most too, where they're just together, posed, dress looks nice, and they're just kind of smiling at the camera. Try to get those ones out of the way first, and then go into start experimenting, start doing stuff, bringing the flashes in. And if the lighting's good, the lighting's good. Especially if it's like today, if it's cloudy or something like that, maybe I won't use the flash unless it is like kind of dull, or maybe the background, it looks better if it's real dark, to expose for the ambient. Then I'll start doing some more dynamic shots. But for the most part, I usually push to have towards the end, I'll start to use my off-camera flash, and I'll start playing with if she has a good veil, I'll put it over them, drape them with it, or I'll do some angles, views from the veil stuff. Maybe do some more pose stuff, because for the most part my style is very controlled candid, and is what I call it, where I'll put them together, have them go chest to chest, and then I'll tell them, I'm going to step back, I'll have them kind of do their first pose, and then I just tell them, start talking to each other, maybe give each other some kisses, start interacting. And especially after the ceremony, they're usually like all about each other for the moment, and they're just kind of going through their own motion. And I usually catch some of my best photos of them not paying attention to me and just maybe start walking off doing their own thing. But usually I'll start off doing the more simple stuff, go into more artistic, candid, and then usually end with some epic shot.
Awesome. So, yeah. I mean, again, you can take this in numerous ways, right? Depending on the lighting, depending on the venue. The way I like to approach it is I usually like to get 3 photos like every time. So number one is I always like to incorporate the venue. So almost like in video where you get an establishing shot, right? I always incorporate the venue in some way. Yeah. Whether it's in the background, if there's an epic, like here in Riverside, the Mission Inn, if you do a wedding here, there's that epic massive like wooden door at the courtyard. Like always do stuff like that, because they booked the venue, right? And they paid money for the venue. So you want to incorporate that in some way.
if you're able to do those
Yeah.
portraits
Or,
of it. Yeah.
and also cool things too. If no one's in the reception yet, that'd be a cool way to do some photos as well. Just depending if if the timing is right. But yeah, like that's number one. Number two is always incorporating a way where movement. Like for me, movement's always key. Like natural movement throughout like the posing. And wide shots. So that's kind of like my style, is having wide shots of where the couples are walking or doing some twirls, stuff like that. I mean, again, you can do different things, but focus on what you like to do and do it that way, because people hire you for your style, and don't shy away from that. And then usually number three is like I like to do something creative at the end, whether it's like a backlit shot or doing something where it's like really unique. But yeah, don't also shy away from getting standard photos, like always getting photos of the couple, that standard like portrait shot of like for the grandparents or the parents, like get as much as you can in a limited time, because sometimes romantics, you don't have a lot of time. You may have 10 minutes and that's all you have sometimes. So moving on, once the romantics are done, right, then typically the bride and groom are going to walk into the reception area, or if it's an outdoor reception, it's kind of the same approach. And this is what we call the grand entrance. So I've seen it many ways as well, and where the bridal party enters before them, if they have a bridal party, and then the bride and groom gets announced like last. And it's like, this is usually like the most exciting part, because the DJ is hyping them up, and then like everybody stands up on their feet, and then they're like, they're dancing to their favorite entrance song, which is super cool. But one thing I do want to have you guys keep in mind is if it's like an indoor reception, think about the light, because sometimes the DJ will dim the lights, or the planner will dim the lights, and like there's not enough light if you don't have a flash or LED. So think about that and test the light when before they even come into the indoor reception area, and figure out if that's going to be enough light, or if you have to be on camera just to follow them. But yeah, so that's the grand entrance, and then typically after that they go straight into the first dance. Sometimes they don't.
Goes into dinner.
It goes into dinner first. It just all depends again. But if they do go into the first dance, then that's that's your opportunity to like make sure you have all your lightings all set up before you even get into the entrance.
Typically after the portraits, they usually go in, they'll have some time to themselves. Sometimes they'll even change. They'll not even wear the ceremony outfits. They'll put on like a reception outfit, or bride wants to get bustled up for the dances and stuff. Usually I use that time, especially if I have an assistant or a second shooter. I'll kind of brief them, or if they've worked with me, they'll know what my style is, and I'll have them either setting up, or right after that I'll run into the reception, set up all my lights and stuff. Typically if it's an indoor reception, the on-camera flash is living on my camera by that point, and I'm not even going to, whether or not I'm going to use it or not, it's already on there just in case for like that situation. I use off-camera flashes too for my first dances and stuff. I usually do a diagonal angle, sometimes stadium light for some epic wide shots, but I'll use those and just kind of use my on camera for fill flash, which I change settings depending on where they're coming in at. If I need to use that as my main light, then I'll use that as main light, and then just keep those off, the off camera flashes. But for the most part, I know for the grand entrance, it's probably going to be popping off on camera flashes, and until they get to the middle. They usually go to the middle of the dance floor and do some super hype thing, and then like you were saying, they'll either get into a first dance, or they'll go into dinner, and then after about 30 minutes to an hour, they'll start speeches, and then after speeches, they'll do the first dance, which is usually followed by a dance with a parent. And lately, the one that I've been noticing a lot of is the dance with like both of the couple, bride and groom, will have a dance with one of their parents, and then they'll get into the other stuff. But yeah, as far as for me, when they do the grand entrance, I usually just have my on-camera flash usually ready to go. Sometimes I'll just throw it in TTL and let it kind of do its thing, because usually, especially in the beginning, it's not that crazy. But there has been those times where all of a sudden they turn off all the lights and you're like, oh.
Exactly. You never know what's going to happen. So being prepared, like, and having lights already ahead of time is going to make your images, like, because the couple doesn't care. Like, at the end of the day, they don't care if there's lighting situations that change, because they're expecting you to capture those moments. So that's our job. Our job is to be prepared at all times, and having an on-camera flash, even if I'm outdoors, sometimes I'll still have it on just in case, because there's been times where the ceremony ran late, right? And dude, it's already like sunset time, and it's like literally like darkness, and so you just got to be prepared. But yeah, so after the first dance, if they do have a first dance before the dinner, then they go straight into dinner. And this is your opportunity to kind of relax, have some food. And sometimes I'll do charge my batteries if I'm doing both photo and video, because you just never know if I need more batteries. And then sometimes this is my opportunity to kind of maybe scout the location one more time to figure out if I want to do some night photos, just so I have an idea where to take the couple.
Maybe there's a cool fountain out front or something like that.
Exactly. And
or a lit up sign like brick.
Like brick. I mean, there's so
Loft 84.
But because it's gonna look different from day to night. So figure out where like there's ambient light. But this is gonna just provide you with some insights when you get into the night photos. But typically after dinner, and like what Nick was saying, then they move kind of into the toast and speeches, which is very traditional. They'll usually have, sometimes the best man, the maid of honor, and then sometimes the parents. It just depends. Sometimes they have one person speaking, and the key here too, in terms of photographing this, is try to work with a DJ and try to advise whoever's speaking to stay in one spot. I've even asked one DJ, I was like, hey dude, can you bring like a light stand? I've tried that one time, but it didn't work out. They just still took the mic and they started walking around, which is so that's why the on-camera flash is key, because if you have your light set up and they move 6 feet from either the direction, then you're kind of like you're out of luck. So that's the thing that you have to keep in mind when you're doing speeches. They may move around. I've seen like best mans like walk around the whole venue and like talking to the tables, and you got to follow them everywhere they go.
And if you're doing video and you have a continuous light, I would recommend, especially if you have an assistant or a second shooter, have them on that light, and maybe just have them doing backup video, like on a monopod or something, but have them on that light, and think about that too. Maybe like get a little nano stand with like a, like we use the Yongnuo YN 216s or something like a what is the aperture?
I can't remember the name, but it's the MC. It's a small like 4x6 like LED light.
And then you have the 60D stuff like that. Something smaller, like on a nano stand. If that sort of situation happens, lighting them up, they could easily just kind of go and follow them with the light too. So
absolutely. Or if you're sometimes I'll have like even like yourself or second shooters like just bring the flash, and just follow the couple or follow the whoever's speaking. It's just gonna make for a better light outcome.
The Amarans.
The Amaran 60X. Those are bicolor.
Super easy to move around, cordless.
Not too heavy either. They're pretty lightweight. So anything that's like lightweight's always like better for weddings, because you don't want to be bringing like a what's that one light from Aperture? It's like a 300Ds. Like those are massive. They're like you're talking about like a big as light. Like you don't really need that. Typically 60 watts is enough. So
60 watts, even at 50%, you have people that are kind of like
it's bright.
One of these obsessed.
So be careful too when you have your lights. Typically you want to like high up in the air and like point it down. Like you don't want to just straight on, because you're gonna blind some people. But keep that in mind.
Something that I just a little tip for those doing video, especially video, that will most likely be having continuous light. Something that I've done with you, and just like stuff even when I've used a continuous light, doing like some hybrid stuff too. usually when I get there to like reception time and we're getting ready for the speeches and all that stuff, I'll set the light up and put it at like 10%, 25%, something like that. And then just kind of keep coming back every few, like if I already know it's not going to be that, I'm going to need to be around 75%. I'll start it low before everything really starts happening, and then just kind of come over and turn it up a little bit. It gets everyone used to it, and they don't notice that it goes up. But if you go over from nothing to like 100% or 75%, usually you have somebody coming up to you like, oh, can you turn that down? Like, yeah, no, go sit down. No, I'm just kidding. No, seriously though, it kind of helps. Like they're just, oh, at first they'll like, oh, there's a light there, but it's not that bright. And then if you kind of keep going over every, or have your assistant go over and just kind of crank it up just a couple more percentage, people will not really know. They'll notice you're going over there, but they're not getting uncomfortable with it, and their eyes get used to it. So
exactly,
little tip.
Yep, there you go. And yeah, I would still even recommend if you're having an outdoor reception, having an LED could be very useful. Again, like the Yongnuo 216, it's very compact. It's like the size of like a lens, like a 35 mil lens, like the Sony G Master, like super tiny. And the cool thing about those lights is that, for example, sometimes you have like, let's say you have like a backyard wedding or outdoor ceremony, or like especially like do yourself weddings. Sometimes you don't think about the lighting, right? During like reception. So they have these fairy lights, but it's not enough. So when you have speeches, it's like complete darkness. So even for like yourself as a photographer, like getting focus is maybe very difficult. So having like additional light, just even one light will be enough to get you better focus. And then also it also helps like the experience of the guests at the wedding. Like, oh, the photographer has a light, and now we could see who's talking, right? Like that's like the biggest part of like.
I've gotten compliments for that. Like, man, if it wasn't for your light, because I did like a backyard wedding. If it wasn't for that little light, I didn't know it was going to be, the father of the bride doing the speech. They can't see who is over there. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it just saves the day too. So then you're like, oh, that photographer knows what he's doing. Okay, so let's move on to garter and bouquet toss. Sometimes it depends, but typically traditionally that's the way it goes. They'll usually have the bride in the middle of the dance floor on a chair, and then the guy does his thing, trying to grab underneath her dress, trying to grab the garter.
Some fun shots there.
There's I mean, you never know what to expect. Sometimes the groom has like stuff that he has planned and he didn't tell no one, and like everyone's surprised. So this is like, for me, this is like the most exciting part. It's very cool, but I know some brides don't like it, so they actually cut out the garter portion of that, and they just
I've noticed that lately.
Because I mean, it's like they're very shy, so then they intimate. Just very intimate, and then they just have a bouquet toss. And so typically with the bouquet toss, I think this is probably like, especially if it's like indoor type of receptions, this is when it could be very tricky with lighting, right? Because you got to figure out exactly where to position the bride, and also even the garter toss, where they should be positioned and where they're going to throw. So always advise like the bride and groom your direction, like give them direction, because if you don't, they may throw in a direction that you don't have the light in. So always give them direction, figure out exactly what's best. Even sometimes DJs, they think it's the best area to do it, but sometimes I just take charge and do it myself because they don't know. Like we're the one that does it all the time.
I have fully gone. Now my workflow, if there is a toss, my workflow is to just take charge no matter what. I'll let them know, like, even if coordinator like, oh, well, we have this spot, like I'll let them know it's terrible. No, it's gonna go over here. There's some spot like Loft is really cool because they have that balcony and they do it there, so it's always gonna be there. But some locations, even if you shot there before, some of the coordinators like to do different areas, and if they do, just kind of communicate that, and then take charge and direct the couple, like this is where it's going to happen, because by this time they've had all these dances, they've already had drinks, and they're just ready to party, and they just want to party and get it done, and just know that this is like, unless you have like an exit photo, which I know you'll be talking about, this is typically the end of the hard stuff. Like this is the last thing you'll really have to control, other than maybe like the exit or a sparkler photo.
Exactly.
So,
Awesome. Moving on to the cake cutting. Typically, again, this can happen different times of the day too, but traditionally I've just seen it always after the bouquet toss.
Yeah.
So the cake cutting is also very important too, especially if they spent so much money on the cake.
Yeah.
So you definitely want to make sure the cake photos are done before you do the cake cutting.
Do them way before everything. Try to do them, if you can, during the details, or have your second doing the details while you're doing the other photos, before anybody even gets into the reception area. That's usually what I try to do.
You don't want to pause like the cake cutting and everybody's expecting, everybody's like waiting on you.
Yeah.
And you're gonna look like a fool when you're trying.
Hold on, I have to get the photos I never got of your guys' cake.
Oh my goodness, So and have like trust your second photographer to do that, because the lead photographer should be focused on other things, right?
Yeah.
But cake cutting, I mean, it's pretty straightforward. Sometimes I do find that it's the couple doesn't really know what to do, so then you have to give them direction as well. And make sure that they have a fork and a plate to put the cake on, if that's something that you want them to do. If not, if the couple's like down for it, they can just basically use a knife and then just grab it. It really depends. I've seen either one happen, but it's sometimes a really just like a fun way to do photos. Sometimes they're just very proper, so it really depends on the couple.
If they grab it with the hands, zoom out, because that's going to be a messy photo. Trust me.
Exactly. All right, moving on to the again, I just added this because typically this is kind of my workflow. So after the cake cutting, I like to do night photos. So sometimes I'll do it outside, depending if it's indoor reception. But again, this is another opportunity. But what I would advise you guys, if you guys are going to do night photos, have it already staged. Right? Don't go into it without a plan, because again, it's a wedding day. Like, they're supposed to be dancing on the dance floor. So so always advise your couple, like, you know what, I already have stuff set up outside, and it's only gonna take like 5 minutes. If you're down, I'm down too, and let's take these epic photos. So usually they're always up for it, and they don't usually have a problem. But again, keep in mind, like, all their friends and family are waiting on them to
if they say no, don't get too upset. It is what it is. But if they say like you said, try to make it quick. Utilize your assistant or your second with you, or even videographer. Tell them what's going to happen, because they'll probably want that shot too. Have you guys out there, utilize each other. Can you stand here? Let me get my light real quick. And if you're going to do something, try to have already know how to do this. If you're trying to do pin lighting or you want to do gels, try to have an idea of so you're not sitting there trying to figure out how to do the lighting with the couple, dragging on the time, like you're saying. Try to make it like 5 minutes.
Exactly.
You already know the lighting. You utilized one of your assistants or the videographer. The videographer used you. You guys already know what's going to happen, and you can get the shot and go.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, just keep it simple too. Next is specific events that's really based off their culture, right? Like here in California, there's a lot of Hispanic community. So one of the things that typically is tradition for them is like the snake dance. And this can be done in many ways, but always understand the timeline. That's why it's so important, like, for you to go over the timeline and understand certain traditions they're going to have, so you're prepared. When I first witnessed a snake dance, I was like, holy smokes, someone's going to get hurt. Like, someone's going to like trip or, like break a leg. Cause I mean, it's, if you don't know, you don't know. So, basically, again, like, YouTube it. And then, of course, like traditional stuff, like for most weddings, you'll have money dances sometimes. Another one I've seen is like where like Indian weddings, they have specific dances, like routines. Choreographed dances. So like it's almost like like what do you call it? Like a
kind of like a show.
Like a show,
Like they're basically putting on like a show, showing what they've done. And they'll have multiple people, and they'll just kind of throw it off in like one little small area, like, hey, we're gonna do this. And so yeah, definitely throw a wide lens on there. Make sure you have your lighting set up. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I'm trying to think of another tradition that is pretty common for most weddings here. But yeah, those two are pretty common here in California. I know some couples, when they do the money dance, it's they usually pin the money like dollar bills, or I've seen $100 bills too.
I've been seeing them put a little bucket out in the middle, which has been really cool.
Yeah.
We'll throw that out there for anybody to kind of pitch that to their brides and grooms, because with the pins, they'll get real goofy with it, and they'll put on like, they'll make a tail on the groom, and it's like real funny. Then it starts going all over the place, and you have pins on, like actual pins on the ground.
On the ground, yeah.
And you have money on the ground. I've seen one where somebody was drunk, and there was 100 on the ground, and one of the friends went over and
they picked it up,
and then they got called out, and there was a lot of issues going on. But no, I've seen them put buckets out in the middle, and so you can go over there and just throw a bucket, or they have a specific dedicated person, usually like one of the, like a bridesmaid or the maid of honor or best man, will hold like a purse, and they'll collect the money and go through the line. So I've seen it like really good too, where like they'll go and you pay beforehand and just go dance. You don't have to worry about
exactly.
It's like, okay,
yeah. I mean, I think most couples understand like that there's people going to help, because sometimes, you know, these money dances, it can kind of get out of hand, and no one's like, you know, no one's like directing people when you're next.
Yeah. Oh, small tip with the money dance for those. Pay attention to the line of the money dance. If you see familiar faces such as the maid of honor or best man, just know it's about to be a really emotional, really cool dance. Or if you see mom and dad in there or grandparents, try to pay attention through the day, like who's who. But usually you'll see best man in line for the groom's line, and then maid of honor with the bride's line, and you already know it's about to get real fun, real silly, you know. And so pay attention who's in line. That's a really cool thing with the money dance. They line up, you can see who's about to start coming forth. I usually try like to capture as much as I can with the money dance, but yeah, just know if you see best man in the groom's line, it's about to get down.
Awesome. Yeah. Good tip.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the open dance floor. And that's typically when
hard stuff is over.
Yeah. The DJ is just, you know, ramping up music, playing music that's like getting everybody hyped up and getting them on the floor. And so again, this is basically like just having fun with it. Like this is your opportunity to get some awesome photos of people smiling, dancing. Again, my approach is I like to get in there. Like I like sometimes to dance myself, but I like to really get it close, because again, everyone has different approaches, but my style is when I use a wide lens, and I'll use I use sometimes tight wide, but sometimes with wide photos, I feel like it feels like you're more in the dance with the people on the floor than like a tighter lens.
Just sniping from a mile away.
And it just doesn't look, I mean, sometimes it looks amazing, but it just doesn't feel like, you don't feel like you're in the crowd, because with a wider lens, you can basically be in the middle of the dance floor, like, you know, and capturing multiple people, not just one person.
Yeah. As far as dancing goes, just be prepared for when this guy levels up. It keeps going, leveling up. Be prepared for dancing with the stars. You'll see this guy. This guy can dance. He isn't lying about that.
Sometimes.
But no, I agree. I like either a 35 or even a 24 as far as full frame goes. Throwing a 35 millimeter on there or putting it at 35, getting right up in there and dancing. Try not to just stand there and taking pictures while people are dancing. They'll get weirded out, and you know, they'll want to move away, move around, get crazy with it.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, I mean, there's so many ways that you can be creative too. Use like off-camera flash, like we do all the time. On-camera flash, if you want more of that, like, you know, on-camera, like direct flash, which is very trendy right now. But yeah, so that's basically a dance floor. And now, once everything's done, typically, and the couple is winding down, sometimes they want a grand exit. Sometimes there's not. But if they decide on a grand exit, there's so many ways I've seen it where the most traditional one is the sparklers, right? Yeah. And we can speak on this for a long time about sparklers, because I think sometimes bride and grooms, it's the first time getting married, so they don't have no idea.
Yeah.
But sparklers, there are different types of sparklers out there. There's short ones and really long ones. And we both recommend the long ones because it just lasts longer. But
The short ones won't last past everyone getting lit. They'll be done.
Exactly. And one of the things we've seen over the years is just issues with lighting them up. Because they typically don't have like the proper the barbecue light. They're using like cigarette lights, which is sometimes not strong enough.
Or a lighter.
Or having one. Especially if there's like a massive amount of people in the line, you need multiple lighters to get it all at the same time. So the way we break it down typically is for photography specifically is sometimes you do use flash, but typically we do like using the LED lights. Just makes things so much easier to get focus. And especially if they're, running at you, it's so hard to get it with flash sometimes. So, but still have the on-camera flash, but use the LED light to get the exposure and maybe just use that. Then you can snap more photos right away.
And then pro tip, if you do get a LED light, like one that goes on your camera, or if you have an assistant holding it up, little pro tip, if you get a bicolored LED, you drop that bad boy down to 3200 and then drop your white balance to 3200, your sparklers are going to be real white looking.
Yep, exactly. Because they're different shade of like the color. Unless you're trying to just edit it in post, you can always do that too. But sometimes you just don't have time to. But the main focus is exposing the couple. And then just making sure those lights are like not overexposed, because sometimes they're very bright. So keep that in mind as well.
Exactly.
If you have a photo and video team, what I suggest is actually doing one run through first with photo first, and then doing another run through. So have multiple run throughs, right? Because if it's long sparklers, you'll have a lot of time. But if it's only the tiny one, you may want to do at the same time, because you're not going to have enough time to do two run throughs back and forth.
And typically with the sparklers, what I like to do is you have everyone line up, so there's a tunnel, and once they get past a certain point, maybe talk to everybody who's at one end of that tunnel and let them know once they get to this point, you're going to have them stop for like a kiss photo. Everybody just close it up. Try not to burn each other though. Watch out for hair. But close it up, and then you'll have all those sparklers backlighting everything, have them holding it up, and then have your couple maybe do like a dip or a spin, something like that. You can get back and then let them run through again, maybe turn around like you were saying, and then have them close it up. Kind of go back and forth.
Just keep it going, because sometimes it's hard to get the biggest thing is getting focused sometimes, right? And then like getting your settings right. And so if you have enough time to do multiple runs, just do it. Just keep going. Like sometimes I think that one wedding at the lobby just kept going until it ran out.
And there was one lady who had a sparkler still going. We were going back, and it was like, when is this thing going out?
And then if there's still extra too, then do maybe some photos with the bride and the couple. Some creative stuff with the sparklers.
And for anybody out there who's wondering, who's going to ask what camera settings, my go-to for sparklers, if I'm using like say the Young Nuo, I usually have that thing up halfway or a little more than half. And my usual, I shoot on a Sony, back then was the A7 III, and then I had the A7 IV. I can handle up to 12,000 on the ISO, but usually for sparklers, wide open on the aperture, 1.4, 1.8, 2.8, whatever you have. Shutter speed, I try to keep around 1/250th, because they are going to move, unless when they stop, I might go a little bit lower on the shutter speed, maybe down to like 1/100th, something like that. But usually about 1/250th, 1/200. And then ISO, I just crank it up like awesome. Like 2000.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't be scared to crank that ISO up. Most mirrorless cameras now can handle low light. I think in that situation at the loft, I think we were shooting at like at least 3,000 to 4,000. And it still looked very clean. Like just amazing what these cameras can do now. Compared to like DSLRs, where it was just so noisy at like even 2,000 ISO. But so that's typically the grand exit. sometimes they'll have where it's a grand exit and they actually leave. Like it's an actual send off. Well, there's a car waiting on them, and they do the exit, and then they jump in the car and they're off. They're off to their honeymoon. So that's very rare now, though. I've only had like maybe a couple of those happen. For the most part, because I think a lot of the weddings sometimes it's like they're still staying at the hotel and they won't leave until like the next day. But yeah, for the most part, that's typically how the wedding day goes. I think one thing we forgot to touch base on is the photos at reception, specifically table photos. I definitely want to touch base on that, because again, we were talking about how important family and friends are. And so sometimes what you can do to advise the couple is, before they have dinner, you can have like each table come up to the sweetheart table to do table photos there instead of the table photos at their table. Because it could be very difficult depending on the setting on the table. Sometimes they have centerpieces which are super tall, and like it's blocking people's faces, and everybody is like on different sides of the table, and then people have to stand up. It just actually takes more time than just having the entire group come to the actual sweetheart table, which I find easier before they get into the dinner, unless they're having served. Maybe it may not be the most ideal, but for the most part, it's usually good for a lot of the family and friends. They don't really have a problem with that, and you're gonna get better photos that way too, because now hypothetically, if you did photos on the table, you're gonna need a wide lens. There's no way you're gonna be able to shoot that on a 50. Like you need at least like a 24 to get everybody in the shot, and typically you're gonna have to go like super high aperture, like 7, maybe even 8. To get everybody from the front to the back. And then in terms of like I think one thing I think we didn't touch base on was what did we miss? I'm trying to remember. I think we got everything in terms of like the dances, toast and speeches, parents' dances, guard. Okay. Details, yeah. So I think we got pretty much everything. I know there's always like
I'll just say, since we did this based off of like the time, the timeline, the whole thing with today's podcast, the timeline, be ready for that timeline to not go exactly how there you go. There's anything I could say, just be prepared for that timeline not to go according to the timeline.
Exactly.
The time.
Yeah, exactly. It's never going to go exactly the way it is, and just be flexible with everything.
Be ready for changes. All that good stuff.
Awesome. Any last thoughts, Nick's?
Just be ready for that timeline to change. Know your camera, know your gear, be prepared. Charge your batteries. Communication with the couple is key. Go off. I always follow up with my couples a couple weeks out, maybe a month out, unless I do the what is that, rehearsal? Go over the timeline, show them what you have. This is what I have for my timeline, or this is what was given to me. Maybe coordinator or planner updated it and you weren't looped in, and it's not fun to find that out the day of. Or maybe they want to add something to your time. Let's say you're doing the whole timeline, which is something I do with some of my couples. I'll actually do an entire timeline with them, and they're not working with a planner. And we get it all typed up, kind of like the timeline I just had right there. And go over that with them, talk to them, communicate with them. Don't be shy.
Absolutely. Yeah. Great advice, Nick. I think last words for me is just expect the unexpected again. Be prepared at all times of the day. Be aware of every situation. And if you really want to shoot in a documentary style, really expect things to, like, sometimes you just got to be at the right spot at the right time. And so you got to put yourself in that position if you want to really capture some amazing candids. And so, like, the way I think about it when I want to capture candids is like being attentive. Everywhere you go, like even if it's you're walking back into the reception, looking at everyone to see if there's anything special happening, right? And just being aware of everybody there. Eventually you'll kind of get to know some of the people there, and figure out who's the most important people there, like the parents, grandparents, and family,
Right.
and really focus on that more than anyone else. But yeah, like just be completely aware of your surroundings too,
Yeah.
and figure out exactly like how things are going to happen, but don't expect everything to go exactly to what the timeline is.
Exactly.
So, well, all right, guys. Hopefully, you guys enjoyed that long conversation about
Yeah.
the wedding day approach.
It could go a lot longer.
Yeah, we kind of really summarized it. A lot of the topics, individual topics, could have their own podcast.
Yep.
And it could be like 2 hours too,
Yeah.
on their own. So we kind of condensed it to very like a traditional way, because there are very untraditional weddings
Yep.
that I think we definitely will have another podcast about.
Yep.
But yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed that.
Got court weddings, elopements.
I mean,
Yeah.
so many.
Yeah.
So
Multiple days.
exactly. So
Keep a lookout for those podcasts.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. If you guys enjoy these type of content, please follow us on our social media accounts. Again, we'll put everything down in the description below. And thank you guys so much for listening and watching on YouTube. We will see you guys in the next one.
Peace out.
Peace.